Howdy, welcome into Take Two with Hawk. He's the Hawk, Dr. Brent Hawkins, Superintendent of Schools in Copper Cove ISD. I'm Director of Communications, Curtis Quillen. Dr. Hawkins, how are you today?
Well, I think it could best be described for those of you Gen Xers that watched The Roadrunner and the Coyote. Today I feel kind of like the Coyote. I feel like something's blown up, but I guess you get to a certain age where 2 days of fun, excitement, adrenaline, great things going through the district, and when you get to be my age, that just kind of takes a lot more out of you. I guess I've lost a step, but it's been wonderful. Wonderful to see the kids come back and get back into the swing of things.
That we always start with good things. We're recording this episode on Friday, August 15th, 2025, and so obviously that's the second day of school, and that's our good thing, is that the kids are back, school's back in session, and now we're back to, having that impact that you talk about all the time with the students of Copper Cove.
Yeah, I went to the first day of school, went to all 11 campuses, did different things on different campuses. It was great, when you think about, 7,900 kids, right at 1,300 employees in the district, and there's 40,000 people in this community. To start up the way we did, we definitely have to get an A. And I say that from the aspect of it's challenging, to say the least. We're not a private school. We're not a school that you say, hey, listen, after this date, we don't take any more kids. And we were taking kids the day before school started, the day school started, and then all these kids is coming our way, and so when you mix that in, I think there's some wrinkles out there, and there's always going to be wrinkles when you can't say, hey, this 2 weeks before school we can't take any more kids. Well, because all summer literally we spend planning. Actually, it starts in November. November starts the planning for the next school year. And so, I came in January 14th when that planning had already started. But to have all of those dynamics, and, all of our buses was home way prior to 6 o'clock in the bus barn, or I guess we'd call it the dog house for the yellow dogs that they're there. And so I think we had a great first 2 days. And like I say, is there things that we're going to work out over the course of the next 2 weeks? Absolutely. You've got some new staff. We have 53 new teachers that are out there. We've got kids that have never been in our district before, that have moved in from other districts. And then on top of all of that, you throw in that over 600 kids was displaced from one campus about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now they're on 2 other campuses. And so that messes with all of your bus routes, your routing software. It puts a strain on the logistics of parents coming into buildings. But as always, it takes a while. Routines and procedures settle a whole lot of that down. And then we go back to a state of normalcy where we can really focus and all the kinks are worked out.
One of my favorite parts of the job of my job is doing that first day with the media. And so, this year we took the press to Hetty Halstead Elementary on the first day yesterday, and they got to talk to Dr. Tanya Sweeney, the phenomenal principal that they have over at Halstead, and you can just feel the energy as soon as the doors open, 7:10, and the cameras start clicking, parents start walking their kids in. It was a lot of fun seeing that, and I didn't get to all 11 yesterday. We'll get to some of why here in a little bit in this episode, but I definitely agree with you that it's definitely a phenomenal way to start the school year, and I'm excited to see where we go from here. Let's pivot a little bit here and talk about the school district, but it's kind of related more to last year than it is this year, and that is that as we record this today, The Texas Education Agency has released the 2025 A through F ratings for each district. CCISD has maintained its B rating and improved from 2024 to 2025 in that now 8 out of 11 campuses are a B or better, where it was 7 in 2024, with Williams Ledger moving up from a C to a B. When you look at accountability for the district, what sticks out to you, and what were your takeaways from that?
Well, I just think it was a shame that we went a full legislative session and a special session, and the legislature still has not addressed assessment. And we've got a broken assessment system, and it needs to be addressed. And you know, I'm apolitical in this deal. I'm not Democrat or Republican, but I can tell you that you know, they need to get to Austin, and they need to do their job, and they need to get that taken care of. As I've said, I don't always agree with Representative Buckley, but Representative Buckley does have a good step forward in this assessment system. We're over testing our kids and getting very little return on our investment from that. And the point that I will make with that is this: those ratings come out, and we're proud of them. We're proud of the effort and energy that went into them. But I also have to defend the kids of Cove and the staff of Cove, because I don't think you really get a true picture when you grade them with AI. And I'm a proponent of AI. I'm just not a proponent of it being used as a grading system now. If we're going to spend the millions of dollars that we spend, then a human being ought to, and the kids stress and worry. You know, it ain't like that they hooked up AI to answer all the questions for them. You know, most of our kids are fluent in ChatGPT, and so if you let them use that on the test, where would we be? So quit grading with it. Let a human being grade it, and I think you'll get a whole lot more accurate depiction, because my friends across the state have found anywhere from 25 to 80% that they have sent to TEA to be rescored have come back as a positive grade, or they passed, where the AI had them failing. And so I just say that, hey, look, here's all the great things that we've done in Cove. However, if a human being had graded them, where would we be? And it's not like I'm trying to game the system. All I'm trying to say is the human being gives you a whole lot more accurate depiction of what's valid out there right now. And so I think that's a shame. You know, we got Coppers Cove High School down as a 92. And you know what? If they earned a 92, they should get a 92. So we're going to appeal that and see if they get an A, because they got them at an 89 for, you know, two ratings in a row. And so one of us is wrong, you know, but it's kind of like going to a gymnastics meet, and you're the Americans, and you look over there at the judges, and they're all Russian. You know, you feel like you kind of at a hole coming out of the gate, but nonetheless, we're going to go through the process because we think that we owe it to our community. You know, public schools is the biggest employer in most communities, and in that dollar in public school, you know, we got a $90 million budget. Well, it turns over anywhere in some districts from twice to 4 times. So we're a tick under $1 billion engine in communities. And the other thing I say is that we also, you know, if you got a great school district like Cove, you got people that want to come here, so your property values are up. It makes your property worth more. If you got a school that parents want to avoid, then your investment, or some of the largest investments that people make, are depressed. Yeah. And so I think that we owe it to our community, and then we owe it to the kids that stressed on that test, and we owe it to the faculty that, you know, that this is their life's work to make sure that we get that right. So that's why we're going to appeal that.
So I want to touch on that. 25 to 80% of appeals from other superintendents that you know have been have seen an improved result after the fact.
Yeah.
There's 5 million students in Texas public schools statewide. So obviously, pre-K, K1, 2, those grade levels are not taking state-mandated testing that play into those A through F ratings, but you're still talking about 9, 10 grade levels that are, and so that's millions of tests.
Yeah, and lots of money because they're not grading it for free.
No,
they're
not issuing it for free.
The state's already paid millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars to get these tests designed and rolled out to the kids. Districts have invested a lot of money in infrastructure and making sure that we have the technology now to be able to take them. Because remember, these 10-year-old kids are sitting looking at a screen for 4 hours, and that's determining whether people think they can read or not. And so, that cost is in addition to, if you want them human graded, you want them rescored by a human, then the district has to fork over more money in order to go back and get it rescored too. So how much money would that cost if every kid got a real chance at a human being grading their test across the state of Texas?
You can read more about the 2025 state accountability ratings at ccisd.com/news. Again, that's ccisd.com/news. Now, for those of you who are sitting there going, Curtis, you're forgetting that the state released 2024. We're aware, but we did that back in April. So we talked about those on an earlier episode of Take Two with Hawk. You can still read those at ccisd.com/news. I think this is something that a lot of campuses like to celebrate, and rightfully so, distinctions. And I want to touch on that for just a second. In the 2025 testing cycle, out of the 9 eligible campuses in CCISD, 6 earned 18 total distinctions. Coppers Cove High School, Cove Junior High, SC Lee, Clements Parsons, Fairview Jewel, and Martin Walker all earned at least one, with Fairview Jewel and Martin Walker earning 5 out of 6 possible distinctions. And in 2024, those distinctions were also just released today. The district earned its only possible distinction, post-secondary readiness. But then out of the 9 eligible campuses, because May Stevens is not eligible for distinctions and Crossroads High School is not eligible for distinctions, so out of the 9, 8 received at least one in 2024. So lots in there to be proud of, but like you said, it's still a flawed system.
It is still a flawed system, and just from those distinctions there, it's hard to close the gaps more than 1 year in a row.
Yeah.
When you close the gaps, you close the gaps. And so I think if you just look at it from a linear standpoint and, hey, this is where we're at, then you forget that, hey, this campus was closing the gaps last year. And so, their kids start to get caught up at that point. And so, some of those distinctions is real hard to get every year.
And it's incredibly hard to get all 6. That's one of those things that you typically point out. Fairview Jewel did do that in 2024. You can read all of that, again, ccisd.com/news to see where CCISD ranks against the state. Okay. Board meeting this week as we're recording this. That was Tuesday night. One of the things on the agenda, and this got quite the crowd inside the boardroom, it was conversions at the baseball and softball fields at Coppers Cove High School. So let's take a step back from this and discuss it. So you've told the story about when you came into town on your interview with the baseball field, and any rainstorm. There was a light one in July, and one of the guys in our department and I drove over there, and we walked onto the baseball field, and the same was true there. Any rain falls, right field's a pool. You look at the softball field, and if you're a middle infielder running backward to field a ball, you're typically backpedaling on a 6-inch slope. It's not a made-up number. If you put a level on the cut, on the softball field, hold it up level, and then put a tape measure under the center field end of it, it's 6 inches. We've done it. It's incredibly steep. Or if you're an outfielder charging a shallow fly ball, now you're running uphill at full speed. And so that field it just kept getting built up, and it's not level, and it's not just crowned either. And so the board approved the conversions of those baseball and softball fields to put artificial turf down, and then do some other upgrades around that softball field. And so I want to see where you want to take that as we talk about those fields for those students.
Yeah, well, it's January 14th was my first day, but in December I was looking at every facility in this district. I said I stayed in the Best Western and drove around the district to really look at it, and there was no doubt that there were needs on that baseball softball field. It really stuck out to me, and and so as I came in, we started working on that immediately. We started conversations about it. I think, in fairness to the board, that thing was on the 2024 bond that failed, and so people knew about it before I got here. I just, when you talk about my entry plan and everything, and you're talking about the facilities in which we have, I'm objective. Do I compare Livingston and Cove as far as facilities and everything? Absolutely. I think that's human nature to do so. But in coming in and looking at that field, people had already said, hey, there's a problem here. And so, the bond had failed, and so it's up to me to try to figure out solutions for our kids. And so Dr. Shuck and I started working. We started reaching out to different vendors to see what they could do. We went through an athletic director change during that time, and so Dr. Shuck and I carried most of the burden on that, because athletic director was going out, new athletic director was coming in, and there's just a lot to do and a lot to focus on. And so we started working with vendors, and we reached out to various vendors and talked about the most economical, efficient way to give the kids a standard in which we want for our facility there. And so in doing so, there were some vendors that, for whatever reason, were busy building other fields. There were some vendors that were concerned about tariffs. Some of them wouldn't give me a price because they didn't know, how much the tariff was going to impact the cost of their goods and services. And then, in full disclosure, in Livingston, before I left, we turfed the baseball softball field at Livingston. And so I had already went through that process with the vendors and getting those quotes and bringing those things to the board, and they were finishing that field after I left as superintendent there. And so I had a good idea about going through that process and what it cost. My only concern was inflation.
Yeah.
What has inflation done to this, possibility or opportunity for our kids here in that interim? And I have used various vendors over the course. 19 years ago I became superintendent, and I've used various construction companies, various vendors, and it feels like that I've had a lot of experience, whether I wanted to or not, in some shape, form, or fashion, that the needs of kids, if you stay long enough in a community, there's going to be needs that you have to address. And so I was able to use those prices there and go out into the market and see what we could get. And, financially, it really exceeded my expectations. And when you look at that turf, it always gets lost in the wash that, there's people like me. I played basketball in Huntington, Texas, and I never did play in an air-conditioned gym in that school district because we didn't have one. We had big fans up in the top of the gymnasium, and I can remember how hot it was and sweat, and we were used to heat, and it really didn't bother us. Today it'd probably kill me, but I'm one of these guys. A lot of times it'll say, well, back when I was in school, yeah, but here's the deal with that. Life has changed, times have changed. I mean, my God, we've got everything up to cell phones and apps on cell phones now that we would have never dreamed back when I was a Red Devil. And so, the fact of it is this. Folks commonly will say, well, you didn't need to do anything but do a little dirt work out there and first one thing and another. And hey, I get your point. However, it is more economical for the district to put turf down, whether it's at the football stadium. 92% of the schools in the state of Texas plays football on turf.
Right.
And so at some point, somebody made a decision to put turf over at the stadium, and over a 10-year period, you've got fertilizer, herbicide, paint, labor that goes into the cost of that thing, water.
Yeah.
And we're in a situation here where, talking to the city, it's kind of concerned about growth of the city and what that does to water. So as a district, anything that we can do to curb our intake of water, I think we're being a good partner to our community. And so you take trying to be responsible from an environmental standpoint. You take the financial aspect of, does it cost money up front? Yes, it costs money up front, but over the course of 10 years, 12 years, 14 years of that field, however long you can stretch that out there, before you have to replace the carpet, because that's the deal. When you do replace it, you only have to replace the carpet.
Right.
You don't have to go under all the subsoil and all of that and redo that. And so I think that economically it made sense. And not only that, those kids made history this past year, and it was an opportunity to say, hey, job well done. And so it made total sense to me. And when we got the bids back, the quotes back, and we looked at them, it's not just carpet and turf. It's, like the softball field there, you're looking through a chain link fence, and it's going to be netting. And then, the outfield, they're going to put R panel up there. And so it's going to be a very good facility that the kids of this district can use for times to come. And, I do believe that we'll have some folks that want to come in here and play us, because, as a coach, when you start looking for people to play, man, I'm not going to Cove. Their fields aren't any good. You're going to go and put your kids in the best facilities possible. And so I think this will get us some competition and some good games along the way, and our kids will enjoy that.
A week ago, when you and I taped this podcast, we talked about the balanced budget, and that was going to be a tough road to hoe for next year because of utilities, which ties back into this. Mm-hmm. You talked about water demand is going up. The supply of water to the city is not. But that also means that the cost of water, just basic economics, that's as much as I understand.
If you want to be energy efficient in a school district, you need to look at your SEER ratings on all your air conditioners. Mm-hmm. You need to look at your insulation, make sure your building envelopes are taken care of, that there's a management system in place. Your lighting needs to be LEDs. Anytime you can put turf down, you flushing toilets and all those things, you need to look at that and make sure that, you got the most ecologically friendly toilets to conserve water. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can cut into making a district work more efficient, and this is one of them.
Yeah. So that's some of the baseball and softball fields. And okay, I know the board asked you this Tuesday night. I'm going to ask you again, just so that we can say it to everybody. When is that estimated to be completed?
The target date is the end of this semester, December 31st, so that we can have them for this year. So all of the seniors that was sitting out in the area out there that kind of lost their breath when I said May 31st, but hey, I'm proud for them. They'll get to usher in their senior year on turf, be the first class to do so.
Another purchase that was on the board agenda Tuesday night, band uniforms and instruments, something that we're trying to get back onto a cycle as a district, and something that the Pride of Cove needs. The Pride of Cove is a band that's competing very, very well, especially against much more resource schools, the Round Rock ISD schools, Hutto, those types of things. It's this purchase for the band that was approved. What does that look like, and what does that mean for those students for the next 10 years at Coppers Cove High School?
Well, I got a saying that a lot of my friends know. It says it only costs a little bit more to go first class. And, those people that you mentioned there, they're definitely going first class. And so, when I came in, if you haven't, kind of back to baseball, softball, I encourage you to go out and support those kids. See that field when it's completed, and go out and support those kids. But as far as our band goes, we have a tremendous amount of talented students in there that are gifted. And I enjoy, last semester I went and sat in Lee Ledger there and listened to, practice, and I've been back and watched practice a little bit, and I intend to go more with our band out there. They'll have a marching contest this semester, and I encourage folks to go turn out, come to the football game, listen to them, go to their contest, support them. But part of that support is that we got to make sure that they look first class. Looks matter when they're out there marching, and they're in a marching contest. We can't have the kids looking haphazard. They've got to look top notch because they're being judged. Dr. Hawkins, is it a beauty contest? Well, I don't know if it's a beauty contest or not, but I know it's all part of it. Yeah. It's just like you go down to local business to get a job, and you need to look the part.
Right.
And so if you want to be a championship band, you got to look the part. And so, when I came in, we were between band directors, and the main thing is this is that when I found out that the uniforms were 15 years old, and you talk about cycles of things, Kurtis is exactly right. We've gotten out of cycles in this district, and there's a reason for it. It's not the Board of Trustees. It's COVID got everybody out of cycles.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, multiple things happened. COVID hit, and we're doing things, and all of our timelines got messed up. And then the other thing is, aside from COVID, you had inflation costs going crazy. And then you had a state legislature that has not funded public schools since 2006. And so, they were really, every district in the state was, making brick without straw. And so that totally devastated our cycles. And, here's the deal with that. When you get behind,
it's hard to catch up.
You at the bottom of a tall hill to catch up. And so this cycle, my God, we ain't got those band kids anything in 15 years. Stop. Okay? 10 years is a normal cycle on a band expenditure for a school district. We got friends all over the state, and listen, they won't even let me sing in church. Okay? So I'm not gifted, but I love music. You can go in my office down there, and there's a Distinguished Educator Award that I'm very proud of that I got up on the wall, because here, I'm the superintendent of every kid. Every kid's dream in this school district. It's my job to do everything I can to give them the opportunity to be great. And so having that on my wall is something that I'm very proud of. And so this 10-year cycle with these band uniforms, I wanted to make sure that the new band director had blessed that uniform. And so, moving forward, it wasn't just uniforms, it was instruments too, because
right.
We had some instruments that was falling apart. Those instruments we're going to be able to get real quick, okay? but the uniform's not so quick. But once again, it's a 10-year purchase, so we need to make sure we get it right more than we rush. And so what'll happen is now that it's been approved by the board, Mr. Morales will get a sample sent to him. They're working on a sample right now, and that sample will come in and make sure that we're not buying anything from Temu. And no, I'm kidding about that. They're not from Temu. They're from Ohio. Okay, and so those uniforms will come in, and they will look at them and make sure that it's the quality that they want, make sure that it's the design that they want, and he's been working on that. You don't just sit down and 5 minutes make up a uniform. He's thought and he's dreamed, and this is a big deal. And so then once that is approved, then they'll go into production. And so sometime next semester, late next semester probably is when those things will come along. But we're excited for those kids to walk out there and know that they're standing in the best.
Yeah, so some people don't know this. I did one season of marching band in college at Oklahoma State, and so they had just gotten new uniforms before my freshman year, and the director talked to us because we were the first. The year I was in, that was the first full football season that they had those. And he started telling us, like, if you don't take care of them, we will charge a new uniform to your Bursar account, because he started outlining that process, and everything you said is true, but like there's even more to it than what Dr. Hawkins is outlining here. They're making sure that they're using not just the appropriate shade of dye in these uniforms, but the right amount so that it comes out the right shade on there.
What you telling me is it ain't like going to Walmart.
No.
If I wanted a new pair of overalls, I can go to Walmart and pick them up and buy them. These are really custom made.
Yes.
And there's a lot of complexity that goes into it.
Right. And that is the band's identity, and it's supposed to mirror that of the school and the town. And so that's why it takes so long. And it's not just because it's Copper's Cove. No, Oklahoma State University went through this, and it took just as long. 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So it's going to be awesome. And Mr. Morales has done a wonderful job so far. And when we see the band take the field for the first time 2 weeks from today, I'm excited to see where they're at.
Well, it's like everything else I say, our kids deserve our very best. And if it's in band or whatever it's in, they deserve our very best. And so, I hope this, the greatest thing that we can give to the kids of Cove is unity. And when we can get our community united behind our band, we can get our community behind any of the other things that are going on. If there's one thing that we could do, it's to clap for each other. Yeah. And when you look good, you feel good, you play good, you perform good. And so, I just my philosophy, and I don't think you have to, I've said you don't have to be Mar-a-Lago, you don't have to drive around in a Lamborghini, but there's a standard of feeling good and looking good for our kids, and I'm very unapologetic about that, and making sure that, look, being frugal, I'm very frugal. When you talk about those baseball, softball fields, that first number we got was $4.3 million is what it would cost for turf alone.
And you're not afraid to tell a contractor that's not going to fly.
No,
that dog won't hunt.
I'm out, because I would do that with my own money.
Yeah.
And so, that 4.3 million went down to 2.1 million, and then we got a lot of other stuff with that. And then, you just sacrifice quality, Dr. Hawkins? No. Come see them when they're done. I guarantee you'll be proud of them, because those fields are the quality of Major League Baseball. And so, but being frugal is one thing, but, our standard is our standard, and we want to make sure that we do our very best for all of our kids. We're not looking for a bargain, even though we're going to get a bargain, but our first priority is to make sure that our kids is outfitted and got what they need.
So that's an update on band uniforms and instruments. It was a busy board meeting, and we'll have a Hawks Talk newsletter outlining more things that were on that agenda for you next week. with the board meeting and the first day of school, it was just a lot.
And let me just say this too, just in closing on this whole week transition, because I know folks got better things to do than listen to me, but it's criticism of, it's like I say, the unity of kids, and I hear a lot of times, that they're in society today about athletics, and that, well, you spend all that money on that. No, we're spending money on kids first and foremost, and I have a passion for CTE, and we got a cosmetology facility over there that we're going to open up an open house on, and I want folks to come out, and I want folks to use that to get your hair cut, to let those kids work, to give our kids practice, because I'm going to do the same thing. But I know Lloyd and Caitlin are two kids that the reason when I came here I felt so strong about that cosmetology program, because it changed those kids' lives. The band program changes kids' lives. Yep. Athletic program changes kids' lives. And so I understand some people have, well, you're just doing this with athletics. No, I'm doing this for kids. And so I'm very proud that the kids get in everything we do. That's going to be the standard that we're trying to set and working towards every day.
And there's this notion those extracurriculars are really more co-curricular. You and I have talked about this in private where, reading, writing, math, those are important subjects, and I'm not knocking them at all. My wife is a teacher, and I value what she does, and I know that you have to have those skills. I learned how to be an adult and an employee by participating in sports, participating in band when I was in school.
I've had people in this community tell me that Bulldog Athletics saved their life, and when you talk about an at-risk program, I don't care if it's the CTE that I talk about, if it's band, if it's choir. Or if it's athletics or any of those sports, there's a special program there for kids, and you can dislike it, that's your opinion or whatever, but at the end of the day, I have absolutely no qualm that the lives of kids are being changed in those programs, and that's why we should all support them, because it does not matter what sport, what program, or what it is. You're going to see me at everything, because I want our kids to know that their superintendent supports them. I want our community to support them. There's nothing worse than being a kid and looking up in the stands and there's nobody being there. You Bulldogs need to know that people are behind you in good times and in bad times, supporting you because they care about you. Kids need to know today more than ever that people care about them.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. If you weren't at Tuesday night's board meeting, if you haven't seen the recording on YouTube, if you didn't see this morning's issue of the Copper Cove Leader Press, right there front and center above the fold, Tuesday evening, the CCISD Board of Trustees approved a resolution giving the district permission to call for a $165.7 million bond proposal. There's that B word again. And here is where we're at right now. And I will hit some of the high points before I hand it off to you, Dr. Hawkins. This bond proposal that is going to the community will be on the November ballot. Election day scheduled for November 4th, 2025. It is 3 propositions. Proposition A addresses the expansion and renovations at Coppers Cove High School, including expanding the cafeteria, adding a CTE center. It addresses renovations at Fairview Jewel Elementary, and it expands the cafeteria and renovates Coppers Cove Junior High as well. Proposition B is fine arts and locker rooms, and that is the Coppers Cove High School Band Hall and storage, and that is the Coppers Cove High School Athletic Annex and weight room, to make sure that every student has the space they need, whether they're playing an instrument or playing a sport. Proposition C is outdoor facilities, installing artificial turf on practice fields at at Copperas Cove High School, and then the construction of an open-air pavilion to protect student athletes from the Texas heat, accommodate UIL wet bowl guidelines, and then it could be used by multiple groups, including for elementary field day. That is a very, very, very high-level summary of it. There's a lot more that we can get into. So I guess the easiest way to do that right now is Dr. Hawkins, 3 propositions, $165.7 million for the November ballot. And it's worth saying, before I hand you the baton, because the election's been called, people should know you and I can only sit here and talk about the facts of the proposal. We cannot sit here and advocate. That is Texas law. So I will ask you where you want to start with that, and then we'll drive the conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you to vote for it. I can't tell you to vote against it. But, I do intend to make sure that I do my job in making sure that I present the facts of it. I can talk to you about the evolution of how it unfolded and come about. There's some things I can't talk to you about as far as the last year's bond. The 2024 bond. I wasn't here then, but I've read everything I could read. I've talked to everybody that I could talk to, but no, this is strictly a conversation. So if you're sitting there and saying, well, I wonder, the superintendent, is he really for it or is he against it? Well, then I've probably done my job. But I do have a duty to make sure that I go through and get folks educated on what it is that their choice is. And so I think we have to back up, and the first thing, and I definitely want to address, I've had a lot of people since Tuesday night that have reached out to me asking questions. And I think that it's important from that standpoint is I'm going to answer some of their questions today. But I also think that it's important that we make sure that, got a little emergency response over here. I think that it is important that we kind of know where things come from, how they rolled out, and then I'll answer those questions. But this whole deal started with the Board of Trustees putting into the superintendent's goals that I needed to evaluate the facilities and to work through committees to make sure that we were doing the things that we need to do in order to address concerns that the Board of Trustees had. And so they put it into my goals, and we started off, had nothing. A bond is a funding mechanism. It's not a planning mechanism. And so we started off and we opened the discussion up to the whole community. And I said that, in multiple venues, that if we get beyond 100 people, that's probably unmanageable. And so I kind of, in my mind, I said, I'm going to cap it at 100. But we opened it up for anybody and everybody that wanted to be a part of the process and moving forward. I thought that was important because, when I read back through the past bond, it seemed that there was discontent on people not being able to give their opinion, not be able to be part of the molding of the consensus. And so I don't know how big the last bond committee was, but that's why I felt strongly that it ought to be open to any and everyone. And so we sent out invitations to the former committee. Some of those people, well, they declined, expressed that they had spent an inordinate amount of time since like 2017 or so in committees, and they declined. Some of them came back, and so we had a mix of veteran committee members and a mix of new committee members on there. But like I said, nobody was turned away. Anybody that wanted to be a part of figuring out what the plan needed to be, was welcomed. Now, at one point, there was maybe one or two people that come along and wanted to join after the fact, and at that point, they had the committee. In fairness to the committee, it had went far enough that I couldn't go back and make up the sessions with them. And so I offered, hey, you sign in, you come in, you can sit over there and audit or observe or whatever it is you want to do. But the committee itself has already committed and been through so much to get to some type of closure on their plan that it wouldn't have been fair to them to went back and started at ground zero, and it would have probably irritated the dickens out of them, because some of them, like I say, been there since 2017. And so that was kind of how that committee was formed. Multiple evenings, multiple hours was put into that committee. They walked through a lot of issues. They walked through a real brief school funding 101. They walked through the needs assessment that TASB had done. They looked at the former bond proposal. They looked at what is the cost of building, and a lot of times you'll get a question about, well, hey, I just built the house, and the square footage that it cost to build that school and the square footage it cost to build my house, it looks to me like, I know one time we built a concession stand, and folks were bent out of shape about building that concession stand. Well, there was like 100 toilets in there, and plumbing runs the cost per square footage up. It's like building science labs. Science labs runs the cost up per square footage because of the plumbing. But I say that to say this, hey, I got a 2,500, 3,000 square foot house. It's got 3 bedrooms, and this was the cost of my square footage. Well, you got to remember that it's not like having 2,400 people come through your bathroom, and that there's also different codes. A single family dwelling is not constructed, on the same stability from a code standpoint, with fire codes, with building codes, and all those things. When you say that C word, codes, when you say that, that's a foreign language term for it's running the price of things up. And so they went through and they understood what the price of construction was, and why it's different in that standpoint. And then they started working through what the needs were. We had a architect firm, that was there. And when I came in as superintendent, I came into that process. Dr. Burns has retired, and then you've got a new architect firm that's over there, Goodwin Laster, that the number one thing that they're known for is efficiency. And then our construction company, Gallagher Construction, came in so that they could offer expert advice. We're talking about heart surgery. If we're going to talk about heart surgery, we probably need a heart surgeon in the room, And so if we're going to talk about facilities and building things, then we got to have engineers and architects and construction folks in the room. And so they were there to provide information on how to take the needs assessment and put it into a plan. They were there to talk about financial projections and things like that as we move forward. And then once that we went through that process, and it ended with multiple ratings. And as you've seen in the paper and you've looked around, there were about $400 million in needs that was sitting out there. that if we had a check, we could just fix everything and it would be grand. But they knew that the district has a scarcity, and they knew that they were limited, and so they had to rank order what the needs of the district was. And so the first rank order was just a blind rank based on the needs and the information they had. And then they come back and added cost to it. What is the cost of it? And then it ended up at the end, they came back and ranked one more time after the architects, the engineers, the construction people had all given them more information. And then that was kind of the genesis or the birth of what the committee brought to the Board of Trustees and recommended on Tuesday night.
Starting with Proposition A, and if approved by voters, Proposition A would total about $142.3 million. So let's go and touch on what's included in these propositions that will go to a vote. And we say all of this. This is not going to be the only place where you can pick our brains on the facts of this bond proposal. Remember, by law, we cannot advocate. It is just we can communicate factual information with our community. We will have more venues for that, including some community meetings that we'll be announcing those plans for here in just a few days. But let's start with Copperas Cove High School. Adding 55 classrooms, but it's more than that with the CTE center that's proposed in this as well.
Yeah,
not more than that in the number of classrooms.
Well,
more
no,
than that in the.
It's. I think the direction that came from the committee was that the transformation of what schools have done, they wanted to align their kids' opportunities with, and so the CTE design is a school within a school. And so, and what I'm talking about CTE, in education, for those of you who aren't educators that's out there listening, we have a tough time because we talk in all these acronyms. But career technology basically is skills, crafts, and trades that 60% of the kids at Copperas Cove High School say that they want to do. They want to be a welder, they want to be a plumber, they want to be a mason, they want to be in HVAC, they want to be in healthcare, they want to be in cosmetology, on and on and on. And so if that was, what the kids have said is their aptitude and biggest demand, then obviously the plan should align with what that need is. And so, the biggest expenditure, as far as new construction that's in this bond is 74,636 square feet of new CTE space. And if any of you have looked at Forney ISD's $1.2 billion OC, or they call it the Opportunity Center, I think that's the direction that this goes, because this plan would give kids the opportunity at Copperas Cove High School to have a storefront. What I mean by storefront is this, the culinary lab would be accessible to the public. They would have a cafe in the front of it, and then they would have their lab space in the back with commercial kitchen and all those things to serve. But it's not just culinary. It's, you've got the vet tech, you've got the dogs that they take care of, you got the floral design class, you've got numerous classes, cosmetology, we've talked about that. It would literally be a storefront that our community could come up, and our kids are getting real world practices by their labs, and then by the community coming up and using them in their entrepreneurial pursuits. And so that's 74,000 square foot of new construction. and then the rest of it would look, to renovate. Like I've said, Chip and Joanna, you would have internally a high school that had been touched in all shape, forms, of fashion inside that high school. You would have the cafeteria that was addressed. And I think, Curtis, the thing that I keep hearing is this, and I know some people's done tuned me out, because the first thing that's on their mind is, I want to build a new high school. And so I think in answering that question, number one, if you ask me, Dr. Hawkins, would you rather renovate a school or would you rather build a new school? Unequivocally, I'm going to tell you I'd rather build a new school. If you want to get in your car and drive to Livingston High School, go down there. Their high school is, was built in 2012. I became superintendent in 2014. But Dr. Myers passed a bond there and built that school. And to have a new facility, a new high school, was, a great benefit to the kids of Livingston. And so if you give me a rather, which should I rather do, I would absolutely rather have a new school. But the numbers are the numbers. And when you look at our numbers, there's a reason that the state of Texas, and I don't agree with the tax system, but nobody asked me, but the taxing system has continued to move the homestead exemption up, but it hasn't moved the tax rate down. And in communities like Cove, where there is a high rate of residential value of property, when you move that up, it proportionately affects your capacity with your neighbor's capacity. If you've got a nuclear plant over here in the next city, or you got a Walmart distribution center, or you've got some type of high taxed entity or if you are a district that 75% of your district is from commercial real estate, and that homestead deal doesn't bother you. Your capacity is not changed. Your capacity to generate revenue to address needs of a district. And so when you think about that, Cove has a lot of residential property. And so what that's done is, between the 2024 bond and the bond in November, the district is now at $175 million capacity. That's all the taxing you can do. You can pass $1 billion bond, but you can't sell more than $175 million in bonds. And so, that's the ceiling. That's the law. That's where we are. And so if you look at Cove High, and you look how many square feet is in Cove High, well, there's over 425,000 in the main building, and then the addition to successfully educate the kids that you would need to educate in a real world model, you would need to add about 12,000 square feet to the cafeteria, and you would need to add the 74,000 square feet to the CTE area. That drives you out at a total over 500,000 square feet. Okay, now that does not include, if you moved off to another school, a baseball field, a football practice, any of those types of deals there. That's just that footprint there. So if you take 500,000 square feet and you multiply that out, what the going rate is for meeting all the codes and all those things, you're at $204,938. $204,938,000 in a new school. You haven't purchased the land, you haven't done the dirt work, and you haven't done one of the expensive things, is running utilities into that school. and then you've walked off and left a school that still has some good in it too. And so when people talk about the specifics of that and why you can't listen, or the school just don't want you to do that. Well, let me be real clear. No one on the board biased the architect, myself, or anybody else on that committee, to the best of my knowledge, in any way about what the outcome of the long-range facility plan should be. And so, you've got that issue. You're grappling with $200 million, okay? And you say, well, you could have pulled the rest of it out of fund, about $25 million out of fund balance. Well, that's more than's allocated, okay? But if you pull that out, then you don't touch the high school at all, okay? And you still got needs at the junior high. You still got needs at Fairview. And so it just becomes cost prohibitive in order to do. And so I wanted everybody to really realize that. And so that committee fleshed that out. And once they saw that, and look, if you got 5 more superintendents or you got 5 more architects, they're all going to come up with the same numbers. The industry is the industry, and that's where it's at. And so the numbers drove that plan. And so I've also had, well, Dr. Hawkins, this school district over here did that. Hey, why can this school district do it and you not do it? Well, when did they do it? Well, they did it in 2020. Okay, well, what has happened to inflation since 2020? It is exponentially blown up. And a matter of fact, you're looking at about a 1% inflation cost per month. So when the architects in this committee started touching this and fleshing through it and everything, the one thing that was apparent in this bond, the district had lost $25 million of taxing capacity that we talked about, but it also lost $28 million in buying capacity. So you're over $50 million of potential loss.
Right.
Of what can you do? And so the scope of what you can do is limited. And unless something is changed in Austin, and we know that's not going to happen, then the committee was left with limited choices. And so when you look at, hey, look, this district did that and it's in 2020, inflation has totally changed that. The game has changed totally, and so I think we all have to be aware of that and know that and understand that. So hopefully that addresses with some specificity the just doing a new high school altogether. And hey, listen, I see it on social media. We need a new high school. Well, the solution that the committee's come up with is that you're going to get a new high school with what you got.
Another thing in Proposition A, Fairview Miss Jewel. Mm-hmm. The proposal there is a new, larger cafeteria in a centralized location, which would actually connect the two wings together and include new space for specialty classes, but then it would also turn what is the current cafeteria into additional instructional space. Yeah,
so Fairview is one of our older campuses, as you know, and I've held on to this deal here because I've heard people say, well, that new bond is just like the old bond.
No, it isn't.
The only thing about it is this. The only thing that you can hang that on is this bond is renovating the high school. And so if that was your standard to say that it was new, then that's your definition of it. And, I used to tell my girls all the time, I had one of them, we were playing softball, she was adverse to the cold. And I would tell her, if it was cold to you, then it's cold to you, and so the same thing there. If you want to make in your mind the definition being that if we renovate that school, then it's the same bond. But just let me point out, when I walked through that with a high school, that CTE deal, storefront deal, that was not in the last bond. And so the mission of that storefront and it being CTE focused from that standpoint, that's different. When we're talking about you got to overcome $28 million in inflationary losses, then you've got to think through things and do them differently, and that's what the committee come up with. When you look at that high school and you see that CTE, that's different. The other thing is different is the cafeteria flipped from one side of the campus to the other, and the cafeteria staying in place. I mean, to move a cafeteria from one side to the other, if you just making new construction, okay, but to move a cafeteria, it's a pretty expensive proposition. So that cafeteria stays in place. That's different. The CTE deal and the way that CTE deal done is different. And so when you walk into Miss Jewell and you say, well, that's the same bond, Dr. Hawkins, that's the same bond. You're talking about Miss Jewell. Well, look, the needs didn't change. How it's being addressed has changed. And so I've got this flyer here, and you can see that Fairview Miss Jewell, there was $13 million in the previous bond. It was constructed in 1965, but only the far right two hallways was being addressed. And one other thing, there was a hallway, what I call a hallway to nowhere, because it was enclosing a hallway so that you just walk through a tunnel from one side of the campus to the other. And so $13 million, and you got, the far right side of the campus, but there's other parts of that campus that has not been addressed. And so in this bond, the entire campus that hasn't currently been touched is touched from one side to the other. The cafeteria and specials and everything like that is located in the middle of the campus, and that kind of took out the little bridge to nowhere type deal. And so, yes, the bond projection went from 13 million to 21 million, but you're getting, a tremendous different scope, depth-wise, than what was in the previous bond. And so, yeah, I think that, and then the only new construction on Fairview's campus was the little bridge to nowhere. But the cafeteria and all of that is a new footprint that goes in the middle of that campus and really ties it together. And so that's all new and very much different from the previous bond.
So I'm glad you brought it up. You mentioned the far right building. That's the Miss Jewell wing. Mm-hmm. I've already seen the question come up, so I'm going to present it to you about the renovations at Fairview back in 2019 and people asking why that needs to be done again. Those renovations to the Fairview wing weren't to the entire Fairview wing.
No, it was a very small segment. It was kind of like we've got this much money, and when we run out of the money, it would be like going out here in the pasture, and you're fixing to make a road across the pasture with asphalt, and whenever you run out of money, the road stops. And so that's exactly what happened with the renovations there. They were small in scope as far as the overall context of the campus, and we will, as I said, the board approved this on Tuesday, and then we've had the attorneys working on the election order and those things and starting school, and there will be a lot more information, graphics that's pushed out. Like you said, we'll have 3 round tables that we'll do. We're going to make sure that that in a real responsible way, everybody knows what is on the ballot and what's not on the ballot. And from, yes, there was a small segment of Fairview, but that campus in totality had not been touched to the depth that you're looking at. And so that's definitely a difference.
The third campus in Proposition A, Cove Junior High. Now, the cafeteria expansion sounds like the same project, but the proposal this time is, I want to say 4,000 square feet.
Well, yeah, you got the Coppers Cove Junior High was only $750,000, and it was basically 2 restrooms and a hallway that was the change, and nothing else was being addressed. And so 4,011 square feet is new construction to expand the cafeteria with the restrooms, not just the hallway, but the expansion as well. And then there's 19,000 square foot of corridor finishes within that school that needs to be upgraded, as well as classroom finishes that was put in here to be upgraded. That's 52,500 square feet in that school.
Proposition B, fine arts and locker rooms. Locker rooms came up on that 2024 bond proposal. This is, tell me if I'm wrong. I see Proposition B, and I sat in those meetings. It's kind of like we talked about with Fairview Miss Jewel. The project sounds the same. The scope is much deeper than what it was previously.
Yeah, and I don't, there's Proposition 2 there, and that is a addition there at Cove High, and I call it, music education, because a lot of people say, well, I'm not spending my money on the band or anything, and there's more than just band that goes on in those rooms. You do have band, you have multiple bands, and then you have music being taught. So I refer to it as music education. And then locker rooms. All of the kids at Cove High do not have a locker, and so what you've had over the years is, there was a time where Cove High was 4A, and now it's 6A. Well, with the that just tells you that it's growing, and then the participation growing, and so I've talked with several of the alumni, and there's very little that's changed as far as those locker rooms goes since they graduated, 20 some odd years ago. Yeah. And so it's 4,000. I'm sorry, Cove High. We've got 7,200 feet of renovations over there, square feet, and then the additional 9,600 square feet in the locker room area, and then the band hall is about 6,000 square foot of finishes there for the music education program, and then existing arts, fine arts finishes is that hallway down through there is about a little under 20,000 square feet there that would be renovated in that proposition.
So you mentioned those locker rooms. The question will come up, and it has on social media already. So again, presenting it to you: are those for use by football, or are those for use by multiple sports?
Well, the athletic director is going to have to determine where kids go. But right now there's kids strung all over the school in locker rooms, and if we're talking about uniting and trying to put kids together and everything, number one, we need to make sure that all kids have a space in this plan, and then aside from that, then depending on the size of teams and sports and how some athletic directors has a unisport athletic period, to where if you're in athletics, everybody's running and lifting. There is no sport.
Right.
It's running and lifting, getting bigger, faster, stronger. And then some athletic directors breaks them up into chunks. And so I think that's going to depend on the coach at the time, and then how much, how they want to male and female both design that. But the mission of the committee, what they were trying to do is to make sure that it was adequate enough to give somebody an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Proposition B. Now Proposition C: artificial turf practice fields and an open air pavilion. UIL has been working to implement wet bulb restrictions with heat. what does that look like? And then why does that open air pavilion come in on Proposition C?
Well, first of all, when you talk about that artificial turf, there's already been some confusion. I had a phone call today from a guy that said, Dr. Hawkins he waited on me quite a while because I was in a meeting. I come out of the meeting, I answered his call. I said, why did you approve the turf before you went out for the bond? And I said, well, the turf was for baseball, softball, and it's being paid out of a different fund. It's coming out of the district savings account. This turf is a practice field turf that could be used for multiple sports. And so you've got cheer, band, the Copperettes, you've got football, you've got track, you've got various sports, including JROTC, that could all use turf. And I think that was the part of what the committee's charge was, is that they saw an opportunity to put it into the proposal, and that they would also, the wet bulb deal. Back when I coached, there wasn't any of this wet bulb stuff, and so and then I hauled hay and worked outside and broke horses and everything else during the summer, and so heat was never a problem for me. Well, it is for kids today. Heat is, there's lots of health related things on the UIL website about heat. And so I know that across the state, there is a lot of football teams that are not able to practice because of wet bulb. When the relative humidity, the temperature, the wind speed, and all of that hits a certain point, they can no longer practice. And so it's shutting them down. Now, the thing that I did do is I stood out in a bunch of lightning storms. It's a wonder I hadn't been killed, with lightning popping all around me and everything. And the athletic director saying, hey, one more play. And so, when it's raining and those kind of things, then, your kids still get to practice. And so I think from that standpoint, the committee knew and understood that, and was trying to, like on that baseball, softball field that I talked about earlier that's not part of the bond, they lost like 20 days of practice time this last year because of the swamp in right field. And so the same thing with the other sports. When you have that cover, you're not going to run into the wet bulb issues that you do without that thing. And then, I kind of chuckle when somebody says cover or indoor practice facility and things like that. But it is a trend that's coming, and folks across the state are using it. And when I've made calls and say, hey, tell me about this, how does it work? And they said, well, Dr. Hawkins, we got elementary field day that we do on ours too. And so we try to incorporate as many people as we can, so that as many students gets access and use to that thing as can possibly do so.
And if you go to some schools in this area that have them, in our district alone, you go to Midway, Baylor just finished some renovations at their indoor practice facility, and they actually moved Pro Day for a few years to Midway High School. And if you're in Midway's indoor practice facility, which if you look down on the turf, you see markings for every single sport. There's softball markings on the turf. There's baseball markings on the turf. There's football markings on the turf. There's soccer markings on the turf. It's incredibly busy.
It's truly multi-sport.
But it is truly multi-sport.
And then extends beyond that to co-curricular stuff.
Exactly. And if you look up, you can see all the same stuff. It's very well equipped. The proposal is not enclosed, air-conditioned, indoor. It is open air. So, poles on a roof is essentially how I would describe it, maybe a net. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's, it's not, Carthage High School has one that's enclosed. I know that like I say, there's a bunch of schools around the state that have enclosed them, got air conditioners. Lufkin High School had theirs enclosed and has for a long time now. And I saw that and I was like, my God, what's somebody thinking? But, along the way, I've listened to people and listened to their uses for it. And I've also listened to this whole deal with wet bulb because, you know, back when I played, your sports injury, your trainers and folks like that, sports medicine, their job was to get you back in the game as fast as you get back in the game.
Yeah.
And today, that's not the mission. With concussion protocols or wet bulb or any of these things, what we did in school is totally changed from what kids are doing in school now. And I know that communities are simply trying to maximize the opportunities for their kids to practice as much as possible. Now, you may be for that, you may be against that, and that's your right. Like I said, I'm not on here to tell you to vote one way or another. I just want you to know the reasons that it was put into the plan, and then you got to make up your mind: is that something that you want to be for or against? And you know, this whole thing is just that, Curtis. Is that, hey, I just want the facts out there. I want everybody to know and understand them, and then, you know, you can make up your mind, and they shouldn't be anybody getting mad at anybody. You know, at the end of the day, vote your conscience, and you know, it's a big decision for the community. It's a big decision whichever way you go. It's a decision for the next 50 years if you vote for it or if you vote against it.
The financial impact, if all propositions were to pass, I have this in here from our financial advisor, it'd be $23.25 per month. That is based on a home appraised at $200,000 in CCISD, which is pretty close to the average home value. In fact, I think it might be a little over the average home value in Coppers Cove ISD.
Well, yeah, and I think you've got to say that once again, those folks that are saying this is the same bond, you know, look, that's not the facts of it. That's inaccurate. You can be against it, and hey, I can buy you, you know, soda pop down at Popeye's Chicken, and we can be friends, or you can be for it and I'll buy you a soda pop down there. That's all irrelevant. But the facts need to be the facts, and these two things, are there similarities in it? Is there one thing over here that's similar as the last bond? Absolutely. But when you look across the whole proposal, it's different. There's $28 million of engineered differences in it, and then I think you're getting more. You're getting less of the you know, in the previous bond there was a lot of sports in there, and in this one it's pared down, and so I think you're getting more stuff. And you look at I go back to that last bond on the stuff that I was left here. The estimated impact is $27.81 per average home value, and you just said it was what, Curtis? What, $23?
$23.25,
okay.
And that's the same appraised home value, $200,000.
Right, 200. We you know, I realize that sometimes there's trust issues, and the bottom line is this, y'all. I haven't been here long enough for most people to trust me, but all my life, and number one, I don't have to be here. You know, I can go home. The lake in East Texas is low right now, but I'm telling you, I'm really looking at buying some property here in building and moving out of the house that we moved into. Because I do love this area, but I'm down a rabbit hole, and I don't have to be here, and I'm here because I want to serve, and this is a community about service. You know, 50% of the kids are military connected, and who better to serve than those who serve kids, and so I just say those things along the lines of we've listened to the community, and this was the things that we wanted to spread out here and give people an opportunity to vote on. Proposition A, as I look at it, Curtis has told you what the previous bond was, and like I say, that's $23 versus $28. And this bond is 165. The other one was 175. And so they are elements, but they're not the same. And then you start walking down. If you want to come down the bond buffet, we'll call it, in Proposition A, you can vote for or you can vote against it. If you vote for it, the impact is about $230 a month on a home of that scope, and that's about a little under a $20 bill a month. $19.96, I think, for Proposition A that impacts those three campuses. Proposition B is $20.58. In other words, that's about $1.72 of impact a month financially. Proposition C is $1.57, about $18 a year, $1.57 a month. And so that's broke out so that the voter can go and figure out if they want to vote for that or against it and know what the financial impact it is. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that, just as in the first bond, 65 and older, there's no tax impact on. So if you're 65 and older, there's no tax impact.
And if you have the 65 and over homestead exemption applied to your property,
go down to the appraisal district and sign up for that. Whether you do it now or you don't, go down there and get that. Take advantage of that. There's nobody that has a disdain for our tax system any more than me. I'm very much outspoken about the way that taxes roll out and those things. But, it's kind of like the STAR test and the EOC. I'm against that. I think that there's a better way to do it, but we got to comply with what we got to work with until we can get the STAR changed. And so, that's something that I point out. I'd also point out that if you got multiple properties, then your homestead, you may have multiple spots of land that you're paying on too, and I understand that. You take that into consideration. Like I said, I'm not trying to at this point say whether you should be for it, vote for it, or against it. I just want to make sure that we get the facts out there and that there's no sensationalization. We've got plenty of time to get everybody their questions answered. I will tell you this: I do respond on social media, but I'm not going to argue with you,
right?
Because that's not what my job is. I'm not here to argue whether you should or you shouldn't. I'll tell you the facts, and if you want to believe them, you can believe them, and if you don't, then don't. This is what made America great, and certainly Texas. Those 187 Texans that stood down at the Alamo that fought for our freedom. They were fighting for freedom. Yeah. And so you have the freedom to do those things.
Where to look for information in the coming days. In a couple of days, we will have an informational webpage built on the CCISD website. You'll be able to find that pretty easily on the district homepage at ccisd.com. Additionally, these facts, we'll start communicating them in greater detail than what we were able to do here, because we were trying to not make this podcast drag on, but also hit the high points in each of those propositions and the process as well. And so we'll go a little bit deeper on the Coppers Cove ISD social media channels in the coming weeks as well. And we'll also have community roundtables, community meetings with information on the proposal as well. We are finalizing those dates as we speak, and we'll get those out to you in the coming days as well. So we're not done communicating about this, not by any stretch whatsoever, but we wanted to make sure that in a timely manner we got in front of the community and explained, at least on a surface level, what's in the proposal, and we can dive into it deeper later on. Anything else on Bond 2025?
No, I think you've hit it. We're going to operate transparent, factual, and if you do have questions, you can email me. And now just give me a little bit of grace, because you got to remember there's 40,000 community members here.
Yeah.
And I I only have so many slots in the day that I can function, and that's why we do the round tables and things like that. But if there's something quick that you want to email me, I'll be glad to answer your questions, because that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And you can email the communications department as well. That's what we're here for, is to try to answer those questions to the best of our ability. And so that email address is ccisdcommunications@ccisd.com. Looking forward, what are you looking forward to as we wrap things up here this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the whole excitement of fall starting, and getting out with the kids, and I went to a volleyball scrimmage, and I look forward to just kids starting to compete, because that's special in today's society. We want to be divisive, we want to be mad at each other, and our public schools should be bringing people together, and teaching our kids how to compete, because when they can compete, they can be successful in life. And so I look forward to getting out to all the competitions and seeing all that they're doing and all the success that they have.
You talk about the excitement of fall. Are you a pumpkin spice latte guy?
Absolutely not.
No hesitation whatsoever. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm excited to see see where we go this fall. We've been blessed to start the year off well, and we're going to work to continue keeping that going. Well, Dr. Hawkins, thanks for your time today.
God bless, and go Dogs.
For Dr. Brent Hawkins, Superintendent of Schools, I'm Director of Communications Kurtis Quillen, saying thank you for joining us on Take Two with Hawk. Again, all of that information coming to you in a Hawks Talk newsletter on the district website, social media in the coming days. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Good night, and go Dogs.